Love Canal was intended to be a dream community in upstate New York, initiated by William T. Love in the early 1900s. Love envisioned a community featuring a man-made canal connecting the community to Niagara Falls. However, by 1910, Love's dream community development had failed. In the 1920s, the partially dug canal became a deposit ground for chemical waste. Toxic waste chemicals were stored within the dugout canal. However, in 1953, the owners of the waste site, the Hooker Chemical Company, sold the site to the local city for $1. Love Canal was then developed into a community with around 100 homes and a school. For a while, it was a relatively ordinary American working-class community. In August of 1978, as a result of excessive rainfall, the toxic chemical waste under Love Canal exploded, causing chemicals to ooze up through the ground. This leakage of toxic chemicals affected Love Canal's residents' health. Some residents were affected by the carcinogens in the chemicals, while others became ill from contact with toxicity. Some infants were born with birth defects, and a group of children became sick as well. This may have been the most controversial impact because the local school's playground was located right above where the toxic chemical waste was stored. Before the disaster, the toxic waste sat under the ground, where the abandoned Love Canal project was initially intended to be. During the leakage, toxic waste oozed out from the ground and contaminated the community with toxins. After the initial disaster, authorities attempted to limit the human to toxic chemical contact by evacuating the area. However, since the chemical landfill remains, there are concerns that the chemicals will affect humans in the future. The residents of Love Canal knew that there was something amiss in their community when their neighbors and they themselves began experiencing symptoms of illnesses, and it was not long before they realized the cause. However, many residents were not aware of the potential danger of the area when they purchased their homes. In 1978, President Jimmy Carter announced the first state of emergency for Love Canal. However, officials did not deem the circumstance risky enough to evacuate and relocate residents until 1981, when President Carter declared a second state of emergency, which relocated any families that had not already moved. As mentioned, one of the most controversial impacts of the Love Canal disaster was the health issues that the local children developed, particularly after playing at the school's playground. These children would return from play with rashes and other indications of health problems. When Love Canal was sold, the Hooker Chemical Company warned the school board not to construct a school on the land that sat above the chemical waste landfill. So, instead of a school, the city built the playground above the toxic waste. As the chemicals oozed from the ground, the children who played at the playground were affected. The blame rests somewhat on the Hooker Chemical Company for selling the land they were aware sat above a chemical waste landfill. However, the city and school board also hold responsibility because they built a school nearby and the playground above the chemical waste. When the Hooker Chemical Company sold the land, they were aware it was a chemical waste site, and they did take some precautions by warning the school board not to build the school above the waste. This warning made the school board and the city aware of the dangers. However, they still proceeded to build the playground above the chemical waste. The most effective way to have prevented the Love Canal disaster would have been to not develop the land surrounding the toxic chemical waste landfill in the first place. The land was developed likely for economic reasons. The city purchased it for only $1, and the money was made by selling and taxing the homes built. Additionally, once the Love Canal chemical landfill exploded, the prospect of evacuating and relocating the entire community was both daunting and expensive. Therefore, it was not until 3 years after President Carter's initial state of emergency that the residents' relocation was compensated for by the government. After Love Canal was evacuated, measures were taken to restore the area. In 2004, 26 years after the disaster, the site was declared clean. However, the restoration was very costly. The Hooker Chemical Company has spent around $233 million in cleanup costs for the area. Although the site was declared clean in 2004, the chemical waste was not eliminated. There is still a fenced-off area that marks the toxic waste landfill. Some residents and former residents advocated against allowing people to return to Love Canal. Nevertheless, the community has reopened, allowing occupation. Some of the current homeowners have claimed to have been affected by the chemicals once again. And today there are several lawsuits having to do with the health concerns over Love Canal. A dream to a disaster. Love Canal was the abandoned dream of William T. Love. It became a toxic chemical landfill turned American working class community, and eventually a detrimental environmental crisis that impacted numerous lives and continues to threaten the health and well-being of many others.